Overall, this book was okay. Okay is the best way and possibly the only way to describe it. It could have been a lot better, but it also could have been a lot worse. And I would put this book in the same category as A Scarlet Letter. It's a book you have to read more than once. You have to read it once to understand how you're meant to read it because it's phrased so oddly. Then you'll have to read it once more to truly grasp the context of the book. And then if you were ambitious, once more to really enjoy the content of it if you were actually passionate about the book. The book was originally written in 1949, meaning that it's a bit out of date, but the way that it's phrased and worded is a little odd and confusing even for the time period. And it seemed as though the author wanted to appear smarter and more refined than they were, and they threw lots of complicated and big words together, even though it did make sense most of the time when it was used. Overall, the book was kind of confusing to read, and I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't learn anything new from it. The content seemed as though the author took plenty of creative liberties and made the book feel more like a fiction novel than a historical narration. The author made the book feel as though the people in it were only characters and not real people that actually went through the things that they've gone through. And the content was drug out much further than it needed to be, and the author added lots to the story that they could have never known about. You get that a lot at the beginning of the book when the author first introduced Becky and Abigail. The author spends a lot of time dwelling on the girls' inner turmoil, even though they could have never known about what the girls were truly thinking at that time. The author also made Betty and Abigail seem really angsty in the book, and the book wasn't particularly interesting either. I could have saved myself a lot of time by skipping reading the book entirely and just reading the textbook and then daydreaming about how everyone felt while everything was happening. I think that the book's greatest strengths were that it had a great title and then it's on a really popular and interesting topic, so it gets plenty of exposure. But the weaknesses far outweigh any strengths that it has. The book is just really confusing, and it's overcomplicated, it's overfilled with unnecessary filler, and it's just generally underwhelming. The book also does a terrible job of setting a definitive timeline. The author throws out a few years and months, but I never really understood when things were supposed to be happening in context to each other. The first chapter is especially bad. Starkey throws out something about 1692 when he first introduces Betty and Abigail. And I'm unsure if the girl's backstory is supposed to happen in 1692 or prior to that, because Starkey talks about January of 1692 being when the girls became prodigies or something, and they could have never known that that would have happened, and then it goes into their backstory, and I still am unsure of when their backstory is supposed to happen, so I don't know how old the girls are through most of the book, because I don't know when things were supposed to have happened. And I wouldn't particularly recommend the book to anyone, but if I had to, I would only recommend it in the context of maybe a literature class or a writing or English class. The book definitely needs a more classroom setting, but I wouldn't consider it a good example of fine writing or good literature. If I were to use it in a class, it would be more of an example of like a timepiece in a literature class, as in this is how writing was at this period of time, but it's still not great writing for that time. And maybe more as a do's and don'ts, more of situation, because I overall do not think that it was a good book, and I wish that I would have chose a better one.